Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 200. Woo! We've made it to 200. Today we're talking about the secrets to a successful property development exit strategy. Just like everything in life, there needs to be an in strategy, an in progress strategy, and there must be an exit strategy. We're going to teach you how to plan your exit strategy from the start, ensuring maximum profitability. That's what it's all about, and minimizing risks in your developments. Let's jump on into episode 200. Hello and welcome to episode 200. Hey, Bob. Congratulations.
Hey, 200. Who would have thought?
Oh, well,
Hey,
who would have thought?
Well, when we were doing number 2,
I think I did the first 8 by
100 times
myself. Oh, my goodness.
you did.
That is a lot of podcasts. Crikey, I've done some podcasts. We have done some podcasts.
You did a few more than me because it started out with you.
Yeah, just about 8, about 200. Wow. And one of the people that I speak to, even this week, Ravi, I've listened to every single podcast. I'm thinking that's a lot of listening to us. So I'm like in your ear. What you have to know is sometimes it gets edited and, chops out a few of the things that need chopping out. Like I always do a double start every week. The person editing it's going to be sitting there right now going, yeah, why do you do that, Hilary? I don't know. And then I just think to myself, when I hear this, or when I hear you, if that someone in the office plays it, they're using cropping or something, we always just go, shut up, Bob, shut up, Hilary. It's just a joke. But crikey, we did it, 200. What would be your podcast tip, Bob?
Oh, damn. Well, I think my tip is just start. It's like everything. Don't wait till you've got it perfect. Like, don't wait till you've got the perfect backdrop, the perfect set, and like everything perfect. Because we still switch things around,
Yeah.
Just make a start.
That's if you're wanting to do a podcast for a particular reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, like especially a business reason. Like it's great for us. It's great for our listeners, and it's a great service. But yeah, you're right. It is just start. It is just do it. Yeah, from the man who walks in, everything's set up for him. He wouldn't even know how to download it, where it goes, what to do. Yeah, just start.
Why would I want to fill my head with that stuff for?
Exactly. So yeah, just do it. It's easy. I just sit down. You don't even. Yeah. Okay. Stop it. Okay, Bob. Today we're talking exit strategies. Before we do, I suppose it's the book, as we always do. This week, going to Chris Moore. Chris, new to the mentoring program. Congratulations. Great to have you on board. The book will be in the post to you. Okay, Bob, talking about the exit strategies for property development, it's important that people have them. And the reason that this is such a great topic is because we know, sometimes they have to change, and it's not always the best for the developer when you change your exit strategy. But there are varying reasons that you may have one. You don't just always develop something and sell it. So let's start with cover off on why developers really do need to have an exit strategy.
Well, you need to know what's going to happen at the other end. In fact, not just yourself, your financier will. So your financier wants to know, what is your exit strategy? Are you going to sell? Are you going to keep some? Are you going to keep them all? What are you doing? And that's important because they want to know how they're getting their money back. So you need to know, not just for your own sake, you need to be able to tell the financier. And in most cases, people sell, but not in all. And some people start off with one idea and end up having to change it through either necessity or whatever reason.
I think we'll cover off on those reasons, the necessity reasons later, because I think they're valid. Yeah.
But you've got to have an end. You've got to have an end in mind. You can't just say, "Oh, look, I'll get the thing built and I'll sort it out later." It's not that simple. You need to know. And property development is a lot about starting at the other end first. We talked about it on other occasions, but like, who are you going to sell to? Who's your market? Those sorts of things, and it's all part of your exit strategy.
Do you know what? As you're saying that, it reminds me of when I wrote my book. Here it is here. Shameless plug for myself. 3 wines in. How to increase your confidence today and succeed in all areas of your life without the hangover tomorrow. What a huge tagline that one had. But this was all about the end. You can't just start the book and let it evolve. Ironically, it has the Evolve program in it, but you can't just start it. You have to have the plan before you actually sit down and work through, with all the nuts and bolts. So yeah, for those that sort of need another analogy, I think that's a great one.
I love your analogy of the holiday. You don't just like pack the car up, stick the kids in the back and head off with no destination, nothing planned. So what do? North, south, west?
What clothes do you
Probably
take?
not east if you live on the East Coast because you'll be in the Pacific pretty quickly. But yeah, exactly.
Unless it was a cruise.
Well.
There you go. But you're right. It's about having, that full goal, the full plan organised, not just partial. But if we could run through, I've got a 5 that I want you to walk through, and then give me examples and reasons why people would change their exit strategy and the benefits, risks, or problems when you do that. So I want you to start by just talking through selling the development. When it's completed, selling, what's the benefit of that, and are there any downfalls as an exit strategy?
Well, it's the most common exit strategy because most people sell. And financiers find it quite simple because financiers need an exit strategy themselves. Their exit strategy is you giving them back the money that you borrowed. That's their exit strategy. Your exit strategy is, how do I get the money to pay back the financiers what I've borrowed? And the simplest way is to sell, and that's the most common way, is to sell the product at the other end. And it's important to have an exit strategy, to know it, and ideally to stick to it. But as you say, sometimes you don't, because the exit strategy that you're planning also can have an influence on the structure that you use in the first place. If you're intending to sell as opposed to hold, you might have a different structure involved. So it is, for that reason, it's a good idea to know what your exit strategy is going to be before you even start. Get your structure right, get everything right, keep the financier happy. And selling is. So the benefit obviously is cash profit. You want to make a cash profit, and you make a cash profit from selling. So ideally, you sell it at a higher price than what it cost you. That produces a profit. So the benefit for you is, 1, you've got the cash to pay back your debt, and 2, you end up with a cash profit. So that's a pretty good benefit.
You know what's funny? We sit here and we do these podcasts and we talk, and I have a few like BFOs, I call them, blinding flashes of the obvious, because like you said, the valuer is probably the number one person who your exit strategy affects, apart from how much money you end up getting, keeping, having, whatever. But then you've actually just talked about your structure, and so many people, developers, are blissfully unaware of the impact of that. We won't unpack that today, but if you are listening, structure is so important, and buying properties in your own name and things like that is kind of 101 do not do's. But yeah, I suppose I'm sitting here thinking, I suppose it's, for us, it's just really normal, and you don't consider that it's one of those moving parts that not everybody understands, and that's the whole case of you don't know what you don't know. Yeah, that's gold, Bob. So next one, selling off the plan, locking buyers in before construction, as a way, obviously, of reducing financial risk, and that can satisfy financiers as well. But what are any other reasons that's beneficial?
Well, it's really a risk mitigation thing to do, to sell off plan, and it's not always good, but it's not always bad. So what we're talking about here, for those that really don't understand, is, let's say we're deciding to sell. We've got a couple of choices. We can wait until we're finished, complete it, maybe even stage it, furnish it, make it look fantastic, and then take it to the market and sell it. That's where we get our highest price. And we'll particularly use that strategy if we're selling to owner-occupiers as opposed to investors. And so that's taking it the whole way. However, we can sell it. When I say sell it, enter into a contract with a purchaser to buy it on the way through. So that could be even before we start to build. It could be during construction. And what that does, it gives us some sales ahead of time. So we know that when we finish it, which is where we've fully drawn our loan, it's where our interest rate is at its maximum, that we already have a sale or some sales. So that reduces the risk for both parties. It reduces it for the financier by having that sale locked in early on the way through, I'll call it, and reduces the risk for the purchaser, for the developer. So it is basically a risk mitigation thing. Some financiers might insist on it. It's mainly the banks who really don't lend money anymore on development, certainly not smaller ones. But these days, it's mainly non-banks that lend. And unless you get into a big project, they don't really require off-plan sales. So you're more something for yourself if you want to do it.
How locked in are people onto these? And like, what's the general deposit if they walk away? Do they lose it? How does that generally formulate itself?
Well, it's a legally binding contract, an off-plan contract. So it's a bit of a heavy document because you've got to remember that it's switched into marketing here, but it's still important. The property doesn't exist. So it's not like you can walk through it and say, here it is. So because it doesn't yet exist, it mightn't have even started to be built, or it might be under construction. So you've got a big disclosure document as part of that off-plan contract which sets out all the plans, the specifications, the brand and type of ovens and everything. So people know what they're getting because it's not built and they can't see it, yet they're paying a certain amount of money or agreeing to. So they have to know what they're getting. So that's why it's a pretty heavy document. How it can work for you and work against you is, I gave that example before, particularly if you're developing for owner-occupiers. Owner-occupiers like to see the finished product. They generally don't like buying off the plan. Because it's an emotional purchase, they want to see the finished product. So investors, not so much. They're interested in other things, rentals and vacancy factors and all those sorts of things. So you're probably not going to easily sell off plan to an owner-occupier unless the market's so hot that people are just buying before the stuff ever gets finished. That doesn't happen very often. I've certainly been through a few of those times. So
how good were those times?
Not really good.
Oh, right. Not for the developer.
No, not really, because they're absolute boom times, and people selling land want too much. Builders want too much. Like, it's actually not great boom times. I'd like it in between. But the trouble is this: if you sell off plan, you're locked into that price. What happens if the market keeps going up or goes up? You could lock it in early, and it goes both ways, though. Of course, you could lock in, say, an off-plan contract before construction starts. And you might not have to settle. Well, depending on the project, let's say it was something like a duplex, you'll settle a year later. Now, if the market's gone up, say the cost of duplexes went up $80,000 during that time. Well, from a developer's point of view, you're 80 grand short, because if you sold it now that you've finished, you get 80 grand more than if you sold it at the beginning. Great for the purchaser. When they settle, they've got an 80 grand head start on equity. So, they're a two-edged sword. But of course, properties can go down. And it can go the other way, but remember, properties go up for a lot longer period of time than they ever go down, or sideways. So
I love that saying when people say, "I'm going to wait till property prices start going down," and I always just think, I wonder when that will be.
Well, there have to be a huge oversupply, and nobody can see that around at the moment. It's a risk mitigation factor more than anything, is off-plan sales, but it can give you a nice warm fuzzy feeling as a developer if you feel like you have to sell some. Like, maybe if you're doing a bigger project, say you're doing 12 townhouses, maybe you just sell 4 off the plan, and that might make your financier feel happy. Even if you don't have to sell a plan, it'll give you a warm fuzzy feeling, so you can sleep at night knowing, well, at least I've got 4 sales coming up. And even if prices go up a bit, like, at least you got those 4 sales locked in.
So, Bob, if they pull out of those sales, you get to keep the deposit?
Well, you can sue them as well for specific performance.
Right. Unpack specific performance, which is a great word.
We're going into marketing, I guess, but with an off-plan contract, there's a lot of conditions in there because it doesn't exist. But really, there's a thing called a sunset clause, which these days financiers want a long one. So a sunset clause is if you reach a certain date in the future where that person can't settle, either the building's not finished or the titles haven't issued, then they can pull out and they get their deposit back. Financiers like a long sunset clause these days because they really don't want people crashing contracts. There's been times when prices have gone up enormously during the construction stage, and developers actually want to crash the contract so they can resell them.
I'm remembering somebody who went through that. Remember mentoring student Danny? He had somebody trying to crash a clause because he'd bought numerous lots in Sydney. And that was exactly what the other guy was doing. He ended up going to court and he won, but that was exhausting, wasn't it, for him?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So that's why financiers around that time stretched sunset clauses out really long time, because they just didn't want people or developers crashing them. So yeah, there's a bit in that. You could just about do a whole thing on off-plan contracts, but it is an exit strategy. Yeah.
And what's generally the deposit? 5%, 10%?
10%.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to be cash. It might be okay if it's – look, sometimes they're even allowed to have deposit bonds or a bank guarantee. It just depends. It very much depends on the financier in terms of what contracts the developer can accept will depend a lot on his financier. For instance, some financiers will say you have to have a 10% deposit. It can't be 5. They might say it has to be cash or a bank guarantee, but it can't be a deposit bond. But then other financiers might be okay with some of them being 5% and some of them being, deposit bonds. So
just when people thought there were heaps of ways to do creative strategies, now we're throwing in there are plenty of ways to do exit strategies. Bob, what about refinancing and holding, retaining ownership, then generating cash flow from a rental income as an exit strategy?
yeah, well, we call that develop and hold. So typically the sale, which we've talked about, we call that develop and sell. Now you're talking about develop and hold. And what we talk hold is we're saying holding as an investment. So we're going to hold it as an investment in the future. Of course, there can be a mix. We can hold some and sell some, and that's even more complex. We might do a 4-pack, keep 1, sell 3, keep 2, sell 2, keep 3, sell 1, sell 4, keep 4.
Stop it. Bob, stop it.
So, but let's just say sell,
yeah,
and however many. That's to hold them as a long-term investment. And I say long-term because investments in property really are longer-term investments. They're generally not short-term.
Although in saying that, we are looking at a strategy ourselves right now. I think I mentioned it on the last podcast, maybe even it's one of the joint ventures we're looking at doing, where it's going to be a develop and hold for 4 to 5 years and then sell. So that's another sort of exit strategy that's in the mix. It's not actually a long-term hold. It's a medium.
And that's how property trusts work. When property trusts, and a lot of people invest in them, buy a property, and look, it could be a big CBD building or a major hotel or whatever it is that property trust buys, they issue it. They're often held for 5 years or 7 years. There is an exit strategy. They're not perpetual. They don't go forever. And so people that invest in those know that their money's going to be locked up for 5 years. They'll get a dividend return on the way through, and at the end they'll get a lump sum. Well, they get their money back plus a lump sum when it gets sold. So that's not unusual in the big stuff, big end of town. But from a small developer's point of view, we might be just building a duplex. Now, we've done quite a few duplexes, and we've seen a number of people who build a duplex, move into one and rent the other as a retirement strategy, part of their retirement fund.
Or another where you do a joint venture with a landowner because they have a decent sized piece of land. Remember, in a joint venture with a landowner, there's no transaction, so that they don't actually sell you the land. It's more of a management agreement, but they keep one side and then you share the profit and the other side, or that's all part of it. So
that's mixing and matching. Look, you can pretty much do anything, but it's very dependent on the structures. This is why ideally you want to sort it out up front because I suppose you can talk more about that. I'm sure you will. Changing things midstream can create other issues. But just back to the develop and sell, that's one of the great things about property development is that flexibility that we can develop and sell. We get cash and we pay tax, big deal. Or we can develop and hold that as an investment. But it's costing us absolute raw developers cost. So we're not paying retail price. We're not paying $600,000 plus stamp duty like an investor would. We're paying $500,000 and no stamp duty because we developed it and kept it.
There you go.
That's simple terms. I'm not
yes.
bringing GST and everything into it. No. It just makes it more complex.
And even just you mentioning GST, that all becomes part of this mix on exit strategy. The last one I've got here. It's not the last, the second to last, joint venture buyout, selling stakes within property development to investors. We sometimes refer to that as a stock back deal, isn't it? But
well, there's a mixture of things. You're right, stock back. I've done those where the person that you're buying the land off, it's a bit like a vendor finance thing, except that I don't want to make it too complex.
Make it as simple as you can.
I'll give you an example.
Do that. Yep.
Okay. So Ben Smith, my old mate, and I did a 22 townhouse project once. And we bought the land off a guy, and this is a long time ago. I'd say it's 12 years ago, so the numbers I'm talking about are totally not relevant anymore.
So for that lady who said that time that Bob Andersen's numbers were wrong, we're talking 12 years ago numbers, just in case she's listening.
So 12 years ago, we bought a site for 22 townhouses. I think it had a development permit on it, it did. And we bought it off a guy for $2 million. And rather than give him the $2 million cash, we cut a deal where we said, look, this is what we'll do. It had no debt. And so we bought the land off him, and we agreed to give him 2 townhouses plus $800,000. So the townhouses were worth about $750,000, like good ones, but they cost us about $600 to produce. So our cost was $600 per townhouse. We sold them at around $750. So what we did, we said, look, we'll give you 2 townhouses at cost at the other end. So at the other end, you got 2 townhouses at $600 worth $750. In fact, they were worth more by then. And we'll give you the balance, which was $800,000 cash. So say we'll give you $800,000 cash and 2 $600,000 townhouses. The $600,000 townhouses are actually our cost at $600,000. And so he picked up money at the other end, the difference between 600 and what they were worth, which was about an extra 200 units. So he got, basically an extra chunk there. He got 400,000 profit out of the back end, and he got his townhouses, and we put some cash in. And so what it meant for us, instead of paying $2 million, we only paid $800,000 in cash. At the back end, we give him the 2 townhouses. So instead of selling 22 townhouses, we sold 20, and 2 of them went to him. The $800,000 we had to tip in up front, we borrowed from a few investors. So we got the $800,000 cash for some investors, and we just pay them interest on the way through. The balance of the $2 million was 2 at the back end. So we basically bought the whole thing for nothing of our own money, and did the 22 townhouse project, which was really 20 plus the other guys. That's a stock back deal. It's a vendor finance deal because he vended the deal. He got 800 cash and 2 townhouses at the back end. So that's the stock back. The stock back is the 2 townhouses, which is stock to a developer back to the owner.
But it's funny. It's also a creative strategy. There's actually
there's 2 in there.
Yeah, 2 creative strategies.
Well, there's a stock back deal, which is a type of vendor finance deal, plus a small capital raise for the 800.
Wow. There you go.
And getting back to the story, we sold half of those off the plan.
Oh, okay.
Because the market was strong, and carrying 22 townhouses is a fair hit, and you never really know. So we de-risked it a lot. Okay. So those 10 townhouses at retail price, that reduces a lot of the debt. Remembering that your debt is roughly about 2/3 of your GRV, your sale price, and so 10 at the full tilt is equal to quite a big chunk of your loan. So it's sitting there waiting to settle, and when it does, it reduces your loan a lot. So I probably digressed a bit there, but I'm into using a joint venture or some sort of fancy structure to reduce risk to a degree and reduce the capital that goes into it.
What's interesting, Bob, is it was just you and Ben, just 2 guys, did a joint venture stock back deal with a creative strategy of vendor finance with investors as well. Like there's so much.
There's more complexity to it even than that.
Yeah, but you're just keeping it simple. But so people can realize that this is something that when you fully understand property development, get the right education, get decent education, know what you're doing. This is stuff that you can actually do.
Yeah, that guy had a little bit of debt on his land, which we didn't want.
Okay.
So we had a good talk to him. He had another investment property somewhere else that didn't have a lot of debt on. So we managed to talk to his bank or on his behalf, and we got them to switch the bit of debt that was remaining on the site we wanted to buy to his other investment property. And that gave us a debt-free site from his point of view. What would it have
meant if there wasn't? Because then you're looking at second
mortgage.
Would
have been difficult because the debt wouldn't have been retired by the cash component that we were putting in. It was close, but not quite. So we need, for the bank to release it, that loan needed to be extinguished. And so all we did was move his debt from that property to another one. The bank was pretty friendly about it because he was pretty tight for cash. And by moving that debt across to another property, but us actually being able to, do that project and get him off the hook there. He was on a bit of a hook, but we got him off.
Oh my goodness. And then the last one I've got here is bulk sales to investors, selling off larger chunks of developments for bulk sales. What are the benefits, and are there any issues with that?
Well, benefits for both sides. So what we're talking here is about wholesaling. So let's just say you're doing 8 townhouses and your exit strategy is sell 8 townhouses, but selling 8 townhouses to 8 people. So that's 8 sales, and they might take take a while. What if somebody walked up to you and said, hey, I'll take all 8 of them? That's what wholesalers do. But they want a discount. So they come to you and they say, oh, instead of paying let's say you want $1 million a townhouse, and so you sell them one at a time, it's $8 million. What if they walked up to you and said, look, I'll take all 8, but I'll pay you $7.2 million for them now, today, off the plan,
Done.
before you start.
Done. I'm there.
Yeah, and that's wholesaling. So that can happen. Some people, some super funds or people with solid super funds, or a couple of people that amalgamate capital themselves for investment syndicates, they'll do that sort of stuff. And so they're buying in at what you call wholesale price. So retail price, that's what the mums and dads pay on the retail market. That's what the agents sell it for. Wholesale is when you get a discount for bulk, and cost is what a developer does it for, absolute cost. So there can be the benefit to the, if you like, to the developer would be de-risked immediately. All the sales gone. The other side of that is they're going to one person or one entity. So if it falls over, all of them fall over. So you need some sort of added security from their point of view that they're not going, it's not going to fall over. And there's different ways of doing that, through liens and deposits and sorts of things. So the advantage for the developer is risk mitigation. You've knocked the whole lot off in one hit. It particularly if it was done direct, and often it is, you're not paying agents commissions as well. And so you're saving there. You're not advertising. You're saving on advertising. So there's costs that you're saving on, and yes, you are discounting it a bit as well. But then, the deal's done, and so that's a good thing. You're getting a bit less money, but you're getting it from the wholesaler's point of view. Well, they're getting it below market value, so they're getting it cheap. So that, and then an example of that would be one of my very first mentoring students, not even officially, Ben Smith, that I mentioned before. I mentioned that we did a 22 townhouse together with my mate Ben Smith. Ben was the first person I ever mentored before this deal, the 22 townhouse deal. And he did a joint venture with a landowner, so I held his hand and showed him how to do it. It was a 20-lot subdivision. And what happened at the other end is I knew a marketer down south who sold properties to investors, but mostly house and land packages. So he'd sell them a block of land and a building contract. The house would get built and that person would rent it out as an investment. That's what he did. So he was looking for land at the time, the affordable land. And so I approached him and I said, look, we've got 20 lots coming up soon, which is in a great area and really good for rentals and not too expensive. And he said, yeah, that's great, but I don't want to buy all 20 of them at one hit. And so we said, okay, here's what you do. We'll enter into put and call options. You take all 20 of them. We'll spread the settlements over 6 months. So basically settling on 3 a month. That gave him time to sell, basically sell 3 a month, which was no big problem. He couldn't sell 20 in a month, but he could easily sell 3 in a month. And so that staggered his settlements, which helped him for cash flow because he could basically fill them and sell them into his investors before any settlements happened on that side of it. And so that was a bulk takeout, all 20 at market value because the market was strong. But the advantage to him was he could settle on them over a 6-month period. Mind you, the debt was retired at probably month 3 to 4 because the financiers, they take all the money until the debt's gone, and then what's left is your equity and your profit. So
it's almost like a staging, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a staged acquisition, really. From his point of view. You're exactly right. It's a staged acquisition from his point of view, which suited his sales rates. From our point of view, okay, maybe we spread the settlements over 6 months, but hey, we locked them in on day one. We locked them in before it was finished. I think we did that deal probably 2 months off finishing the land.
Do you know, it's interesting, Bob? I sit here and I know the minute we start talking about creative strategies and exit strategies and finance, it's just you've done so much. And I know finance is probably one of your favourite things, or just all of this, the creative ways of doing stuff or how things really are in property development. Honestly, I just watch you and think there's nothing you don't know. But I have heard that Ben Smith story because you always tell it at a workshop just to explain joint ventures with a landowner. But I didn't know, you've never told that side of it, the stock, how they were sold at the other end, which is interesting. I think you should phase that in, but then we've got to be careful we don't overload people with too much information.
Yeah, I guess what it does show, even if our listeners and viewers don't 100% understand what I'm saying, there's 1,000 ways of doing these sorts of deals, and that's what we teach. In fact, if anybody else is teaching creative strategies out there, I can guarantee I taught them in the first place. So
you can guarantee you've done them.
Well, I've done them.
Yeah.
I do. I did them long before I ever taught them,
Yeah.
and we continue to do them. We're doing a number ourselves at the moment. But it's fantastic. That's the exciting part of property development. I mean, look, I'm talking fast. I'm excited because I'm talking about deals.
I don't know if you've ever heard Bob talk fast and get excited, because he's generally pretty in Australia. Yeah. So, yeah, you are very excited about it,
Plus,
Bob.
bringing all these old stories back excites me, because these are deals I've done with mates of mine, and great deals we've done, but deals where everybody benefited. It's not where there's a winner and a loser. There's two winners in all of these deals.
So, Bob, what's a situation where somebody might have to change an exit strategy? And what are the impacts of that?
Yeah. Well, one situation could be, for instance, let's just say when you enter into a project, everything's looking rosy. And during, let's say, construction phase, which could be 12 months, whatever, the market goes a bit soft and your sale prices are dropping, and you're thinking, ooh, hang on. If I sell them at that price, I won't make much profit at all. It's unlikely you'd make a loss, because the market would have to drop a lot for a developer to make a loss. But you're thinking, well, I was going to make 150,000 a townhouse. Now I'm going to make 80 or 90. That's a bit of a hit over 4 or 5 townhouses. Do I really want to do that? And you might decide, well, can I keep them until things pick up again? And people do that.
And the implications with stamp duty?
Well, there's a few tax implications.
Tax.
Yeah. So, look, I can't give tax advice, nor am I qualified to.
So this isn't tax advice.
But what's happening there, first of all, the structure mightn't suit. Mightn't be perfect for what you're going to do, hold them. Then how long are you going to hold them for? And as your exit strategy now change from selling them to keeping them, and one day in the future selling them? Because without making it complex or giving away tax advice that I can't do, if ever you get audited by the tax department on anything like this, or anything at all, but say property development, they go back and say, well, what was the original intent? That's what they look at, the original intent. Now, your intent was to sell them. Now you've changed your intent to keep them. And that can affect tax. Like, if you buy an investment property and you hold it for more than a year, you sell it, you get the capital gains tax relief, 50%. Well, you won't get that, because your intention was never to buy it as an investment, to develop it as an investment property. You've changed. And I've seen developers do that and hold it for a year or two and sell it and try and claim the 50% capital gains tax relief because, I've had it for a couple of years. Well, no, your intention when you did it was not to do that. And if they get audited, first of all, they will have to pay tax. It's not capital gains. It's treated as income tax, not capital gains then. And they'll get fined for basically trying to beat the tax department. So changing intent can change the whole tax thing.
Is there a way around that? Can you have an open intent?
Well, the intent needs, but that's like, you can do it. You can intend to sell it and then change your mind and keep it. It's just that when you sell it, don't try and get the capital gains tax relief. Just claim it as full profit income. You can do it. Just you can't have it both ways.
You're still better off.
Oh, yeah, you're better off, yeah. Particularly in the future, you'll sell it back at market value or higher, whereas what was the intention in that example I gave you? Well, if I'm going to sell them now, I'm going to make a lot less profit, so I'll hold them for a while. You also create problems with GST as well, because if your intention was to sell them, you would have been claiming your GST tax input credits back on your costs all the way. But when you develop and hold, it's on account of capital, not on account of income, and then you have to give the GST back. It's called clawback. So what I'm saying is, yes, you can change your intent, but it might affect your tax if and when you sell, and will affect your GST. That's why you need a really good accountant to help you and talk through the scenarios before you actually do anything. And another example would be, let's just say you develop, your intention is to sell, and you've done it in a company, right? So your entity is a company, you set up a company, you bought the site in a company, developed in a company, and you were going to sell it, and now you're going to keep it. And let's say you keep these things for some years. Well, two things there. One is your intent changed, so you could get hit. The other thing is you can't claim the 50% capital gains tax relief if it's done in a company, only if it's done in your own name or a trust. This is not tax advice, of course. This is just stuff that I've heard. One of the bars I frequent occasionally is full of accountants. It seems to be where they go, and occasionally I'm sitting down having a quiet beer and I hear accountants talking about all these things, and I just sort of listen in, and all I'm doing is repeating some of the things I've heard at a bar. Could be right, could be wrong. Certainly not advice. But the other thing, if you're developing and you want to keep it, you wouldn't do it in a company, because if ever you sell, you can't get the 50% capital gains tax relief. You do it in a trust, or I wouldn't do it in my name. So that's why structure is very important. Intent's very important.
And exit
and you want
strategies.
to know at the beginning what your exit strategy is going to do, are going to be, and ideally not change it. You can change it, but just be aware if you do some other things, it's not that simple as just changing. It will affect things like potentially income tax, capital gains tax, and GST.
Well, Bob, I think we've covered off enough there today. We've had a big old yarn about exit strategies. Who would have thought? This could go on. I know this could go on for ages, but we don't want to lean to the fact where people start going to sleep and those driving, sort of start getting tedious, like Bob's voice. But as usual, just like structures, exit strategies, everything you do in property development, there are plenty of moving bolts, little bits and pieces that you need to be aware of. And I think you've really opened my eyes to things today that we just take for granted. And then it's like, I suppose people don't always think of that. So great, useful information, Bob. Thank you. Any parting advice?
Well, some people would have picked up and understood everything I said, and some people won't. But look, the key, and it's fine, get educated first and use the very best
educator.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah, use the very best educator. But beyond that, the very best people, in other words, lawyers and accountants, because they'll both be involved in the structural side of things, and they'll both be involved at the other end of your strategy, of what the best structure is to work with your strategy. So always the very best people of everything. If you do that, you'll be fine.
Well, on that note, we do have our 3-day workshop coming up in September on the
19, 20, 21,
Thanks, Bob. Yes, you covered my butt there. On the 19th, 20th and 21st, it is too. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the Gold Coast. And if you're interested in coming to that, I would recommend our bundle where you get the online course. You get 2 tickets, one for yourself and a partner, business partner or life partner for that, to the workshop, our feasibility calculator, our live Q&A every fortnight. There is so much with that. And if you're serious about property development and want to learn from some people, obviously, who know what they're doing, that would be us. So feel free to either give me a call and have a chat about that. Just jump there. There's always a link after this, or head over to our website and you can book a call with me anytime. Failing that, we wish you well, and we hope that we've opened your eyes to potential opportunities for different styles of exit strategies depending on what you may want. Okay, well, that is the end of episode 200. Congratulations to us.
We survived 200.
We did. We made it. And we'll catch you next week on episode. I can't believe we should have had a glass of champagne at the end of this one.
Well, I'll go and have one now.
Okay, then. In fact, I think you can take me out for dinner. Okay, that's the end of that. We will catch you again next week. Bye.
Bye.